Good afternoon. I thought I'd drop by this afternoon just to give you some ideas of things that you could buy and eat that's a bit alternative to buying wheat-based products or gluten-based products. It's not that I feel that wheat per se is a problem. I think the problem today is that people have too much reliance on it, and so it forms a large part of people's diet. People often have toast for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, pasta in the evening, and the combination of all of that is probably and possibly just a little bit too much for our digestive tract to manage. Wheat is quite a modern grain based on the age of the human population, and gluten in itself is considered to be quite tricky. Gluten is also found in rye. So if some people might think, oh, I won't have wheat, I'll go for rye-based bread, but that also contains gluten. Oats, though they themselves, it's not that oats themselves contain the gluten, it's just that they're grown or produced in factories or grown close to fields that have gluten. There can be some cross-contamination of gluten. So if you go for oats, you need to be really, really careful that what you buy is actually clearly states that it's gluten-free if you feel you've got a problem with it. But normally, unless it's something like celiac disease where you absolutely have to avoid gluten, then normally you should be able to eat some oat-based products and not have a problem. So some ideas that I've just got out of my cupboard this afternoon, just to give variety. My clients say, what else can I eat? When you start saying, well, why don't you try reducing down on a certain type of food, it's always, what do I eat? Because we're so used to, aren't we, always buying the same sort of foods all the time. And I think this might give you some ideas of just how to increase variety in your cupboards and what you may be cooking week to week. First up, nothing particularly unique and novel about this. This is just some brown basmati rice. So yeah, rice, of course, is a staple grain. Nothing new about that, but it is gluten-free. And of course, I would say buy brown because you've got a slightly higher fibre content. But when you keep the husk from the grain, then you're going to be getting important nutrients like B vitamins and magnesium and phosphorus and other important minerals like that. So it's a slower release carbohydrate as well, and it contains some protein. So, don't overlook good old brown rice. It's gluten-free. Great if you're making things like chili con carne. You can have this cold in salads and other things like that. What else have I got here? I'm sure many of you now have heard of this food that people are never sure how to pronounce, quinoa, which comes from South America. Strictly speaking, this isn't actually a grain. It's but it cooks like a grain, so it's a really useful thing to have in place of pastas and things like that. It's a rich source of protein, so if you're a vegetarian, then it's quite good because it's a great way to get extra protein in your diet. And as opposed to brown rice that takes up to half an hour to cook, I find that quinoa, which you cook in the same way as rice, cooks in about 15 minutes, and I like its nutty taste, and that's just a lovely thing. Again, have it hot or cold. You need to cook it, but you can have it hot or cold, and it's really delicious. Noodles. So again, noodles typically are wheat-based, but these noodles are buckwheat, and actually, despite its name, it has absolutely nothing to do with wheat, the grain, at all. That's so confusing, I know, but buckwheat is not wheat, and it's gluten-free. So if you're doing a stir fry or something like that, then have a look out to buy buckwheat noodles. All these things are quite readily available in our supermarkets now. Good old lentils. I love these pui, I think you pronounce them, these pui type lentils. The reason why I like them is because they hold their shape when you cook them. Now, if you do have some digestive issues, then lentils can be for some a little bit challenging. So if that is a slight problem, then just be aware of that. But I do think lentils, and if you cook them with like a bouillon stock powder, they have an absolutely fantastic flavour. And bouillon doesn't contain any wheat-based products, so that's really useful to know as well. So good old lentils are really, really useful. Other than main meals, if you're looking for a useful snack, don't want to eat a piece of toast, obviously trying to avoid things like crisps and chocolate, then I love eating things like oat cakes. Now, like I said earlier, then oats themselves don't contain gluten, but it's if they're produced in a factory that processes other grains, you have to be a little bit careful. I've got these Nairn's oat cakes. They don't actually say gluten-free, but you can get Nairn's or other oat cakes, and they will specifically state gluten-free if they've been made in a factory that doesn't produce any gluten grains. And I love oat cakes. I love eating them with things like nut butter. So this is a cashew nut butter. You can get almond, hazelnut, you get loads and loads. Better than peanut butter. Peanut isn't strictly speaking a nut, it's a legume. And of course you get the fantastic fats by eating things like cashew nut butter, so it's excellent to watch that. And finally, as an alternative snack, you can get some, I'm not sponsored by any of these products, by the way, manufacturers. Rude Health do a really good range of crackers, chickpea and lentil, this one. So again, it's gluten-free, actually says that on the box. Actually got a little bit of green pea in as well as the lentils. They look a little bit like a rice cake. But I think these are much healthier for you than eating something like a rice cake. But they have quite a big range of products. So have a look out for those in the supermarkets as well. So that's all I've got here to show you this afternoon. I just think it's about when you go to the supermarket, keeping your eyes open and spending just a little bit of time in case you're having a look around and seeing what different things are out there. I'll be obviously talking more about things to reduce, avoid and help if you have IBS type symptoms. I have talked about this, but I am running a free webinar on Thursday the 6th of June at 7 p.m. You do need to register. You register via Zoom. It's also on Eventbrite, but you do need to register, please, and I'd love to see as many of you on there as possible. So thank you for the time. I hope you found that useful today. Thanks.